Okay, let's dive right into this. Right now, over 500 hours of video are uploaded every single minute. Think about that volume for a second. It's just a staggering, never-ending avalanche of content, and it's all fighting for the exact same thing: human attention. But here's the crazy part. Your content success is almost always determined before a single second of your actual video is even watched. So today, we're dissecting the anatomy of a click in this explainer. We're going to look at what actually makes a human being stop their mindless scroll and decide to engage, and how artificial intelligence is completely revolutionizing how creators manufacture that exact critical moment. Here's a quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the psychology of the click, then we'll map out choosing your AI tool. From there, we'll look at prompting for performance, dive into the face value formula, and finally, navigate the ethics of AI. All right, Section 1, the psychology of the click, understanding viewer behavior. So before we even think about touching an AI tool, we really have to understand the science behind human attention. I want to pose this core question to you. What actually makes a viewer stop scrolling? In today's insanely competitive visual environment, you're fighting against these endless feeds of high dopamine content. You literally only have a fraction of a second, often less than half a second, to capture someone's attention. A stunning image alone just isn't enough anymore. If that image doesn't immediately trigger a subconscious psychological response, your conscious brain won't even register it, and it just becomes virtually invisible in the feed. Well, the absolute best thumbnails rely on 3 core psychological triggers. First up is the curiosity gap. The most effective thumbnails don't summarize a video. They actually pose a visual question. They create a mystery that the video itself promises to answer. It kind of leaves an itch that you simply have to scratch. Second, we have emotional snapshots. You want a genuine, captured moment, like think of the exact second before reaction happens, rather than some stiff, posed photo. And finally, contrast and clarity. High contrast between your main subject in the background is absolutely crucial. In a scroll-heavy context, especially when we're looking at tiny mobile screens in dark mode, clear contrast helps the brain process what it's seeing instantly without having to work for it. And there's actually some really fascinating empirical data to back this all up. Back in 2024, Naver Webtoon conducted an eye tracking study. They basically compared how our eyes visually respond to human-drawn thumbnails versus ones generated by artificial intelligence. They wanted to see exactly where human attention naturally gravitates when presented with these 2 completely different creation methods. Looking at the data, the heat maps confirmed some really interesting human behaviors. Viewers could actually easily distinguish between the human-drawn and the AI-generated works. This was mostly based on texture and materiality, the subtle imperfections in human art versus that hyper-polished sheen we see with AI. But here's the real kicker. Regardless of how the art was made, our visual attention spiked heavily on very specific things. The eye naturally darted straight to female characters, it lingered on non-human entities like complex monsters, and it zeroed in right on centrally positioned figures that took up a large portion of the frame. We are simply hardwired to look at specific, striking visual anchors, no matter who or what drew them. Moving on to Section 2, choosing your AI tool. Categorizing the market. Now that we know why people click, we have to actually choose the right AI tool to manufacture these clickable moments. And let's be real, the AI thumbnail generator market is incredibly crowded right now. But you can cut through all that noise by categorizing these tools based entirely on your specific workflow. Like if you want deep creative control, you're going to look at prompt-led tools. If you're starting with a finished video file, video first is your category. And if you just need speed and pre-made templates, you go straight for quick output. Choosing the right category fundamentally changes your time commitment. It saves you hours of frustrating trial and error because you're aligning the tech with how you actually prefer to work. Let's look at a couple of the top contenders here. So for a prompt-led focus, the standout is Joomla. This is really designed for creators who want to build detailed prompts with total control over the channel's tone and the overall visual layout. Instead of just throwing in a generic keyword and hoping for the best, you give the AI deep context. You tell it exactly who the video is for, the specific mood, the overarching aesthetic of your brand, and what makes this workflow so powerful is that you can refine the output collaboratively. You don't have to start from scratch every single time you want to make a tiny adjustment. On the flip side, if your workflow is video first, vidIQ is a fantastic choice. You basically just drag and drop your final video file, and the AI goes to work. It analyzes it to instantly pull sharp, scroll-stopping keyframes directly from the actual content. It's incredibly efficient because you bypass the need for any extra image uploads entirely. For creators who absolutely hate the process of posing for thumbnails after a long, exhausting shoot, this saves a massive amount of time, and it ensures the thumbnail perfectly represents what's actually in the video. All right, Section 3, Prompting for Performance, the Midjourney Masterclass. Once you've chosen a prompt-heavy tool like Midjourney, your success entirely depends on how you talk to the AI. Midjourney is definitely not an instant thumbnail machine out of the box. It heavily rewards technical understanding. So, here is the 4-step architecture for a high-performing prompt. Number 1 is subject and action. This is the big one. A prompt like person gasping at a glowing screen will drastically outperform a vague prompt like person looking at something. Number 2 is composition and framing. You explicitly have to tell the AI if you want a close-up, a wide shot, or an over-the-shoulder angle to guide the viewer's eye. Number 3 is lighting, which establishes mood and depth. And finally, number 4 is style and quality parameters. This is where you dictate the aspect ratio and rendering style so the image actually fits the platform's requirements. I really want to highlight that 3rd step for a second, lighting. Lighting is what creates the visual drama that actually stops the scroll. I mean, it's the difference between a flat, boring image and a true cinematic masterpiece. By specifically prompting for rim lighting, you get this glowing halo effect that cleanly separates your subject from the background, which is a massive advantage for readability on mobile screens. Or try prompting for split lighting. That creates deep shadows on one side of the face, instantly giving you a sense of mystery or conflict. You can also throw in terms like volumetric lighting for those dusty, dramatic beams of light, or natural golden hour for a warm, inviting feel. You can literally elevate the quality of your thumbnail just by controlling the virtual sun. Which brings us to Section 4, the face value formula, humanizing the AI. So, a cinematic background is awesome, but it's not enough on its own. For most content, expressive human faces outperform absolutely everything else when it comes to click-through rates. But to maintain your personal brand, you need what's called a face model. This is where you deliberately train an AI on dozens of high-quality photos of your actual face. Once it's properly trained, the AI essentially learns the exact geometry of your likeness. Then, it can consistently generate brand new thumbnails featuring you in all sorts of dynamic expressions, shocked, happy, curious, all without you ever needing to set up a camera, adjust your lighting, and do a whole new photo shoot every single time you upload. It's a real game changer. But to get this right, there are some pretty strict do's and don'ts you absolutely have to follow during the training phase. You must use clear, well-lit photos. You also need to include different angles and a wide variety of expressions so the AI learns exactly how your face moves. It needs a robust, diverse data set to work well. On the flip side, you definitely don't want to use blurry or heavily filtered images because that just corrupts the data. And please do not use group photos or pictures where your face is hidden by glasses or shadows. If you feed the AI confusing data, it won't know exactly which features to isolate, and that completely ruins the likeness in your final output. And finally, Section 5, Navigating AI Ethics, the what-ifs of AI generation. The rapid rise of these incredibly powerful visual tools brings us to our final, and honestly, arguably most complex topic for this explainer. We're going to neutrally lay out the facts as reported by industry observers regarding the current debates around AI generation. And this quote sets a fascinating baseline for the whole discussion. The ethics isn't in technology, it's in the people. The fundamental idea here is that the technology itself is really just a tool, kind of like a camera or a paintbrush. The ultimate responsibility for how that tool is used and the real-world consequences of it rests entirely on human choices. The first major area of focus right now is data and intellectual property. AI models are trained on massive, sprawling datasets of images sourced from all over the internet, and often this is scraped without explicit consent mechanisms from the original creators. We're seeing human creators actively reporting about their highly unique, carefully developed artistic styles are being replicated by these systems in a matter of seconds, largely without any credit or financial compensation. And this mounting tension has culminated in some major pending lawsuits. For instance, massive studios like Disney and Universal are currently suing Midjourney over the alleged replication of their copyrighted characters, arguing that generating these figures infringes on their long-established IP rights. Next up, we have to look at society and trust. AI models can sometimes inadvertently reinforce deeply ingrained societal biases, purely based on the nature of their training data. As an example, a recent study found that when an AI was asked to visualize STEM professions like engineers and scientists, 75 to 100% of the generated images exclusively depicted men. Furthermore, the rapid rise of hyperrealistic deepfakes is severely blurring the line between what's real and what's totally fabricated. Observers in the industry are warning that as these incredibly convincing fake images flood our feeds, it's actively eroding audience trust in visual media. Viewers are just becoming increasingly skeptical of everything they see, which fundamentally alters how we all consume digital information.
There's also the very real physical footprint of AI to consider, the environment. Generative AI data centers require massive amounts of power to run, and enormous volumes of water just to cool their servers. To put this physical footprint into perspective, the training phase for GPT-5 alone soaked up an estimated 1.2 million liters of water. And on the power side of things, it's estimated that everyday queries for that specific model consume about 45 gigawatt hours every single day. That sheer scale of resource consumption presents a really significant infrastructural and environmental challenge as this technology continues to scale up globally.
Finally, let's look at the economic impact. The unprecedented efficiency of AI is bringing a massive shift to the creator economy. Economic studies right now are projecting a 21% income loss for human audiovisual creators by the year 2028. This points to a large-scale shift in revenue moving directly away from traditional human artists and flowing toward generative AI platforms and tech companies instead. Because of this rapid shift, human creators across basically all disciplines are facing this immense daily pressure to adapt to the tech and integrate it into their workflows, simply to maintain their relevance and livelihood in a space that's becoming increasingly automated.
Which really just leaves us with this one final, provocative question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. As we rapidly move forward into this totally new digital frontier, how will we balance the undeniable raw efficiency of AI visual generation with the irreplaceable value of genuine human authenticity? It's a profound question that every single creator, marketer, and viewer is going to have to answer in the coming years. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive, and keep learning.